Class will get started in about a minute. It's already on. All right. Well, good morning. I'm glad to have you all this morning. So again, welcome to our summer Sunday school. It's going to be centered around the Germany trip that Ashley and I went on with the Synod. No, it's okay. So we're going to get started this morning. So I wanted to take y'all through the same thing we went through. We're not going to go exactly the same path we went, but because I wanted to kind of frame it into a class about the Reformation. So the three parts are going to be, we're going to start here. This is going to talk more about the origins of the Reformation. How did we get started in the whole process? What were some of the catalysts that brought Martin Luther to this, intersection of time and history? Because it's not just Luther had his opinions, right? It's a whole cultural development over many, many years. And so this is part of our journey that we got to see. And so at each point, I'm going to take you through the historical sites. I've got some pictures, and we'll talk a little bit about the place that we saw and its historical significance, not only to the Reformation, but in general. So today, again, we're going to start here. I titled it Origins of Reform. And so how do we get to where we get? The next two are going to focus specifically more on Luther. I had so much Luther content, I had to break it up. So we'll get started. We'll see how much this $5 Amazon clicker works. There we go. So we begin our journey in Mainz. So who here has ever been to Mainz? I know you have. Some of us. So this is where we started our journey. We literally took off from Dallas. We got on a plane. We flew to Paris. Then we walked from Paris to Egypt, and then back to Paris to get on our connecting flight. Charles de Gaulle is a huge airport that made no sense. So then we flew from Paris to Frankfurt. We immediately got on a bus and drove to Mainz. This is the day we just pulled in. So the pictures you see of me and Ashley, we have not slept at all over like a day and a half. But they wanted us to make sure that we got on the rhythm of the jet lag, so they just decided we'll just keep you awake for 2 days straight and see what happens. So Mainz really is where our story begins of the Reformation. Now, it has very little to do with Luther. Luther is not in Mainz. But Mainz has an important historical role as a city that has this giant cathedral. Now, why would it have such a giant cathedral? Who knows? Who knows what a holy see is? It's where a bishop sits. And not just any bishop, an archbishop. Oh, it's not going to work now, is it? Okay. So here's the main city of Mainz, where this is like the main center square. Right here, this little building behind me and Ashley, this is the original cathedral built in the Romanesque style. It is built around the year 1080, something like that. This is one of the original structures. The Holy See is where the archbishop, so higher than a bishop, sat. It is the place where, at the time of the ancient, the church is developed into much more than just the church, right? The early Catholic Church, the archbishop is not just a religious figure, they hold a lot of political power. And the archbishop controls even more power in the area we are called. Now, in this time period, it's not called Germany. Who knows what it's called in the time of Luther? Yes, that's specifically where he lived, but the whole area of Germany is not called Germany. It's called what? Nope. It's the Holy Roman Empire. Now, here's the fun thing, and if you've ever watched Rick Steves, you'll know it was never holy, it was never Roman, and it was never an empire. It's one of my favorite jokes. The Holy Roman Empire was a collection of city-states, basically, and Mainz was its own little city-state area. Thuringia was the larger city, or was the larger state, Saxony being a little bit larger than that, right? So you had these areas that had what they called electors. Now, electors, what did they do? They elected the Holy Roman Empire. Now, the church held immense political authority over these people, and their power seated here at the large cathedral. This being in the original building. This area would have been where most of the city was, and then this being the actual cathedral. They built much later, but so it's not only a religious center, it is a place. Which one? Yeah, it was the center post of the city. It was one of the original pillars of the original buildings. Some of them got destroyed. That was one of those center block towers that they erected, and they use it to kind of adorn during certain holidays and things like that. When we were there was a city market in that square that they were just tearing down, and they were setting up for a holiday. But it's the direct center of the town. So, this person is St. Boniface. He is the reason there is an archbishopry in Mainz. He is the first archbishop of this area. And he begins a tradition of extreme political support and power in this region. Willigus, I guess, is the first big person who puts a church there, but Boniface is the big name who kind of makes it an important place. As we get on into seeing how that relationship develops, you'll start to kind of see what's good and what's not good about having such a powerful center of the Catholic Church being in Germany. Rome was so far away from most people, right? It felt like another world was there. So for Germany, Mainz, where the archbishop was much more. This is where Catholicism is. This is where the church is. So the church was very important for the early Catholic community in the German area, in the Holy Roman Empire. The electors had a lot of the power. The bishops had power politically and spiritually. And this was seen as almost as important, if not more important, than Rome itself. So it wasn't necessarily what the Pope said, but what the Archbishop said. So if you can't tell, Boniface is the stone one, and I'm in a hoodie.
Pastor,
yes.
You hear a lot about various churches in Europe not having attendance as they normally would like to have. Is that still true?
Attendance?
Yeah, people come.
I mean, I guess just like anywhere else, We didn't. We attended a Sunday service, but it wasn't in the morning. It was in the evening. But we'll. Yeah. And it was small. Yeah. I think so. I'll address that a little bit. Like, I'm sure that's true because I think it's true everywhere that just people don't go to church as much. But where we were, you have to remember, most of the places in Germany that we were old Eastern Bloc countries. So for a long period of time, church was not allowed. So church was against the state. So it's kind of like some people are Christians, some people are not, but it was kind of like even if you were, there wasn't a lot of practicing to do or to have. So it's really only been a couple, like 20 so years that some of the places we've been have even been allowed to have church services anymore. So to answer your question, yeah, it was less, but again, we didn't see a lot of these churches on a Sunday. We saw most of them throughout the week, during the middle part of the week. The one place we did worship was in Leipzig. It was in the evening, and it was a prayer service. It wasn't a full liturgy. But it was really nice.
On the churches that you attended, were there more adults than children?
There were no children.
No children.
Yeah. Yeah, but I only went to one service. Most of the churches we went into were Catholic, cathedrals or Lutheran cathedrals, and it was during the middle of the week. So not a whole lot going on. Here's some just more pictures of the cathedral because it was very big and cool looking. Well, that's what I'll get to on the next slide. Man, it's just not. It's a radio signal, so it's not. There's too much in the way. I'll sit over here. So this is what I wanted to show you. So this is the original kind of Roman structure. Here you see some of the newer, like where they started to build. So this is about the 1000s. Again, timing is it's not done. You see these, they're always working on it. Always doing repairs. This is more Gothic in style, so this is more of the 1500s, 1600s. This is definitely new. This is, I think they said this was 18-something. Huh? Well, new for Germany, that's like, hey, this is brand spanking new. We got the tags cut off. So some of these towers would not have existed. Now, Mainz was not heavily bombed in World War II, but it was. This site did have damage and destruction, but was mostly survived. The roof did get burned down, and all the glass was blown out. So but they've repaired since and restructured. So this is why I showed this. These houses. So back in back in the Middle Ages, people started to, if you were important, you built close to the place that's important. So if this is this is the bishop's house, this little area right in here. Of course, that wasn't there. It's a newer facade, but this is where the bishop would have lived. The archbishop would have lived inside that home, and there is and I'll show you later, a courtyard back in here. And there was like a private way to go to his private little chapel. And and there are pictures of the inside of the chapel too. And so this would have been the original structure. These houses would have been built around 14, 15, 1600. I think this one itself was built in the 1600s. There are some of these things that are original to the 14, 1500s. But it just depends because all of it's piecemealed over, 1,000 years. So this is the inside of the courtyard. This would have been private for the archbishop. This thing's going to kill me. So here is the inside of the cathedral. Now what you start to notice is the different architecture between Roman Catholic and Lutheran. This is very big, broad, sweeping, a lot of art on the walls, a lot of different imageries. A lot of these right here, these are these are facades that are sculpted. And most of them, because we're in the palace of the archbishop, are archbishops. So each one of these pillars has one of these little facades. And I have close-ups of them too. But I'll show you the close-ups of them too. But most of this, the cathedral, again, the purpose of the cathedral was to inspire people, especially the Middle Ages, the people of the Middle Ages, of grand religious iconography. That's part of it, but also that the power of the bishop was important, and the power of the church and the bishop specifically who wielded that power was important. So a lot of it was to inspire people and to just show how important some of these folks were. Most of the sculptures do have religious themes. So, now along the cathedral windows are all these little plaques that look like this. It was the names of all of the archbishops in Mainz. And I took a picture of this one because this one, he's a big player. Why is he a big player? Why is Albrecht von Brandenburg a huge, important person?
That's who Luther had the most, not interaction with, but just stamped with.
Yep. So look at the years. 1514 to 1545. He was the Archbishop of Mainz, so the seat of Catholic power in the Holy Roman Empire during the age of the Lutheran Reformation. It is actually Albrecht von Brandenburg. It's his fault. No, it is his. He is the catalyst for the Reformation. And this is right here is Albrecht von Brandenburg little monument seal. But and this is just an interesting aside of the culture. Do you see these two little wheels here? These two wagon wheels? So this is the coat of arms of this archbishop. Why does an archbishop have a coat of arms? He has an army. He also is what? Huh? No, but he's a noble. He is of nobility. He has a political role. And this symbol right here, you'll see in most of Mainz today. It is still the city symbol for Mainz. It comes from these coat of arms from the bishop. So this little, all around Mainz, you see this little symbol, and that's their city logo. So something from the 1500s is just plastered everywhere. And we asked them, they were like, so what's with the wagon wheels? They're like, I don't know. We made wagon wheels, I guess. Like, yeah. They're like, I don't know. A bird. Yeah, well, it is. So it is that it is a bird. It has the wings here. You can't see the feet, but they're yellow. They're right here. Yeah. No, that's how long he was archbishop. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is the years he was archbishop, not the years he was alive. Although he did die in 1545, but he is not a young person. I mean, he's kind of young. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But we'll get to the point of Albrecht von Brandenburg here in a second. So, this is those facades that I showed you. Most of them are kind of plain, right? The regular sculptures. This one, it's at the front of the cathedral. This is Albrecht von Brandenburg. Do you know what these are?
It looks like gold inlay.
It is gold, but no, they're shields. So this is to prove his heritage of how royal he is. And this right here, do y'all know what these are? Those are collars, and they are the appointments, just like a stole, of a various church office. Now, Albrecht von Brandenburg was already the bishop when he wanted to be the bishop of Mainz. He was already the bishop somewhere else. And at the time, you couldn't have two bishops. Or you couldn't have two bishoprics. You had to, if you were already a bishop, well, I want to be bishop here, and I also want to be the bishop in Mainz. And I want to be an archbishop. And the Pope's like, well, this is in early 1510. Pope Leopold is like, well, I am trying to build a giant cathedral here. I want to build St. Peter's Basilica. Tell Albrecht von Brandenburg if he can pay for it, we'll give him a second bishopry. So Albrecht says, all right, I'll pay for it. So to get this right here, he starts raising money. How does the Archbishop of Mainz raise money? Indulgences. He sends Johannes Tetzel, John Tetzel, who is an indulgence seller, to start collecting money to buy his second bishopry. And there's a lot of other corrupt things in the church. There's a lot of other players who start the Reformation. But what really gets Luther's goat is this trying to buy the position through the sale of indulgences. Because indulgences were already being sold. If you went to see relics, you already had to pay to see them. But it wasn't until you start to see St. Peter's Basilica being built and the influx of political power being bought that Luther really starts to have, I think, awareness of how deep that corruption is. So it's kind of like at the same time as Luther is gaining understanding, the indulgence cell is ramping up. Albrecht wants to build his fancy status. Why? Because the Archbishop of Mainz gets to be the Prince Elector. One of the Prince Electors. He's one of the 7 people who get to decide who the Emperor is. That's an important. So he's already a bishop. He's already important. But he wants to choose who gets to be the Emperor. And he does it. He buys it from the Pope. He becomes the Archbishop, and they wield that power. And he does help Charles V become the Emperor. And it's this whole thing, right? And they're related, right? And so there's this whole intermix of political issues, money, and corruption. Here comes the influx of indulgences. If you're not familiar, was the church saying, at the time the church had a policy about purgatory. Purgatory was the place you went, not hell, but not heaven. And you would go there after you died to burn off your sins, purge your sins. It would burn your sins off. And purgatory was the place that you would go for thousands of years, because you're such a horrible sinner, to burn off your impurities so that you could go to heaven. Now, a person who was good had built up this certain amount of grace called an indulgence, and the church wrote out a little piece of paper saying, because of the Pope's goodwill, you, for a price, can buy some of this goodwill from the Holy Father and be forgiven of your sins before or after your death, or for someone you know. And you could purchase this indulgence, and it would free your grandmother or your uncle from purgatory. So escape the fires of purgatory for a low, low fee of $9.99 plus taxes. Shipping and handling is included. Please buy an indulgence. And these indulgence sellers went everywhere, and most of it was to raise money for both Albrecht von Brandenburg and the Holy Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic Church, the building of St. Peter's Basilica, and who else is at... We also have an army of the Holy Roman Empire and an army of the Papal States, and they're fighting someone called the Turks. We have to stop the progress of Islam. You should buy an indulgence to help stop the warring hordes of the Turks from crossing our borders. So all this is happening at the same time. It's a firestorm of money mixed with religion. This opulent thing is the entrance to the bishop's private chapel. Doesn't that look like a very religious person? In a suit of armor? This is the private chapel that we got to go into. So up here, you see this little area? That's where the bishop would have, he didn't, go and sit with people. Like he would come in through his private little door, and he would sit up there and he would take Mass in from up here. And if the emperor was visiting or if a royal friend, they would, that's where and people would sit here. But if no one was there, then the bishop could be in his private little room. That being said, it's very lovely in there. I had a little prayer. It was nice. I'm not Catholic, so I didn't pay them. And I didn't light a candle. So, that is the political, religious part of it, of what really kind of kickstarts Luther's angst. You see I got to actually see the opulence of Albrecht von Brandenburg trying to acquire these positions of power. And so that's kind of where we get this. This is what angers Luther about the situation. Now, the other side of the origin of the Reformation is just the natural progression of time. The technology is now at a place that people can start to learn things and do things that they couldn't before. Luther had one very big advantage about him starting a religious reformation is all about ideas. And how do you get ideas out? By the press, right? Like we can send a text or upload a Facebook page post, but at the time books were not available. Really, printed word was the only thing. Letters, handwritten things were just very rare. Very few people knew how to read. So the spread of information was almost nothing. In comes Johannes Gutenberg. Who knows who Gutenberg is? The Gutenberg Bible. Now, does Johannes Gutenberg invent the printing press? No. Thank you, Herb. Gutenberg invents movable type. That's the big, and now that's still a big deal. The Gutenberg press is his own thing, but it's the movable type that he himself creates. And that's what this is. This is a giant stone block that is a replica of a tile that they would put in. And so what they would do is they would cast these little metal figures and all these little things, and they would arrange them on these little plates. And it was very tedious, and it was very time-consuming, but compared to hands copying a book, it was impressive. And so Johannes Gutenberg invents movable type a few years before Luther's Reformation. So a few years before Martin Luther really starts writing, Johannes Gutenberg has invented this process. He lives here in Mainz. Gutenberg is from Mainz, lived in Mainz. So in the same region as Luther, you have this invention of the ability to mass produce and print information. And it is the information that changes things. Because why would you buy an indulgence? Because you believe that in the Bible that was a thing. You would believe the Pope. Why would the Pope lie to you? That there was this place called purgatory. That this purgatory was a terrible place. And that if you wanted to go to heaven, the Bible must have said that there was in there that you would have to pay for the privilege to get out of purgatory and go to heaven. That relics were important. That all this stuff was real. You would have just believed it because that's what the religious leadership was telling you. But they were lying. It's not true. It's not in it. It's not in the books. But do you know how many people didn't? And some of it's nefarious, but some of it's not. How many of your normal priests could even own a Bible? They wouldn't. They wouldn't have even had, maybe a really rich monastery would have had one Bible that they would have copied from every day. And so the amount of information that gets misused, misplaced, mistranscribed, written wrong is enormous. So spoken word, judging of the truth happened all the time, and no one really could check you on it because no one could read. We'll just move along. All right, so here is the Gutenberg printing press. This gentleman gave us a demonstration of how it works. And after he showed us the tile and he would take the little things and put it on, and he would press it, they gave me a little sheet. He would. No, it was the first page of the book of John in Latin. So I'm going to have it framed and brought in one day, and I'll have it to show. So they used paper. They had paper. That was the other thing, is the paper was super expensive. A lot of people thought they used vellum. They did some, but in this time period, paper was available. But you had to buy it in two places. You either bought it in China or you bought it from Italy. And it was super expensive and it was super rare. Some people, but that's what they talked, because we all said the same kind of stuff. We were like, oh, what did they use? And he was like, paper. But it was hand-laid paper, so. All right. But getting back to what I was saying, how much do you think a book would have cost before the printing press?
There is
Yeah, a handwritten book would have taken someone, 3 or 4 different people working nonstop their whole life to do a complete book. Not necessarily, but you wouldn't just sit there and do the whole thing. But a handwritten book took a long time. And then that was just for the writing on the page. Then you would have to take it to an artist who would do, if there were any coloring or illustrations, they would have to draw those. That took time. Then you would have to find someone who would bind it, who would make the actual book bindings, who would then bind it. So all in all, it would take a normal person, they said something about 60 to 90 guilders. 60 to 90. So to put that in reference, if you were a really good merchant who made good money, you might make about 10 guilders a year. So we're talking, if you were a rich person, you might make about a couple hundred, couple thousand, just depends. But it was usually a very well-to-do person's annual budget for about 3 to 5 years. Maybe more. For a book. So who had books? Just the rich people. So to put that in, one of the richest people at this time period would make about 2,000 guilders a year. They're the ones who had books. And that was usually the prince elector, or the emperor, or the archbishop, or the church itself. The church did procure and purchase, but not every monastery, not every church. So very few people had books. If you had a book, it was religious. It was the Bible. Because that's what you did, right? So, with the printing press, what do you get? More books. And more types of books. Here is a songbook. This one is actually a book about different stories, like short stories and fairy tales. You just start to see the explosion of, and here you can see some of the plates that they would put the little things on for the printing press. And you see in the back there, you see that's what they all would look like. The typeface was set, so every page was uniform. So this right here, these were wood carvings that they would press, but you had to pay someone different to do that. And then this was hand-drawn. So even if you got a printed book from a printing press, you still had to send it to an illustrator, to an artist, to both bind it and to illustrate it. So it's not like the printing press just started making books cheap. Like, it went from like 60 guilders to like 20 guilders. But still, it's still like 2 or 3 years' salary. It still took a lot of time. But, the point is what it is. They start really printing a lot. Ashley next to the printing press. And okay. So I know I'm running out of time. I knew that was going to happen. Okay, good, because I've got a little bit more to say. This is just a beautiful place in mind. I threw in some pictures at the end to be kind of pretty. And to show you, this is us walking from the Gutenberg Bible to our next place. This is a East German checkpoint. Come on. All right, this is what I wanted to get to. This. So, again, Gutenberg, very important. The written word is now being able to be handed out, given out. The spread of information happens. It changes the world. It enables us to start to see what Scripture can be. Luther, and when we get into more about Luther, that's a big part of it, how he actually does translate the Bible into German and gets it printed from Johannes Gutenberg's shop. This, though, I want to end it on this because this is the end of our day in Mainz. This is St. Christoph's Church. This is where Gutenberg was baptized. This was his church. In World War II, it was destroyed. And instead of rebuilding it, it was created as a war monument to remind us all of the horrors of war. There is a melted statue of Gutenberg outside of the thing. I couldn't find the image. I'll have to go back and look for it. But this is the juxtaposition of history, right? You have this ancient city with these medieval importances, one of the most influential people of the whole world. Like Gutenberg transforms how we learn about everything, and to see something that was around since he was alive. The church had stood since Gutenberg was baptized there, and in World War II, boom, gone. So the reminder of and so that's what, St. Christoph's.
Are those beams, those look like new beams on there? Is there a restoration?
Those are to keep it from falling down. Yeah. They're not going to restore it. They just don't want it to fall. Yeah. I mean, there's no supports in it. It's literally all the supports burned except for these right here. These are original. But there's nothing keeping that facade on.
Were there any plans to rebuild it?
At some point, but they did turn it into a memorial. So next time we'll be in the footsteps of Luther. So this right here is in Worms, where Luther says, "Here I stand." And so they put a little statue of feet that you can get in. And because we were there on like a Thursday, they weren't expecting anyone. They had like the gardeners out watering everything. We were like, "Can we just move the water hose for a second so I can take a picture?"
Are you standing in someone's boots?
Luther shoes. My feet almost didn't go in. But next time we'll talk more. Obviously, this is the precursor where how we get to where we're going. Mainz and the rest of it will be specifically Luther, the story of Luther. So thank you.